My name is Janet, and I'm 28 years old. I'm 28 now, and my name is Janet. 6 years ago, what should have been the proudest day of my life turned into the most humiliating moment I'd ever experienced. My life's most proud day, 6 years ago, instead became my most humiliating memory. Imagine this. You're standing on stage at your college graduation, diploma in hand, having achieved the highest academic honors possible. Picture yourself at your university graduation, on stage with your diploma, having earned top academic honors. You scan the crowd for your family's proud faces, expecting to see joy and celebration. You look for your family's expressions of pride, anticipating happiness and a sense of accomplishment. Instead, your own mother stands up, grabs the microphone, and announces to hundreds of strangers that you'll never amount to anything. However, your own mother gets up, takes the microphone, and tells a huge crowd of people that you will never be successful. Before I tell you what happened that day, I'd love to know where you're watching from. I'm eager to hear where you are tuning in from before I share what happened that day. Drop a comment below and hit that like button if you've ever had someone doubt your dreams. If anyone has ever questioned your ambitions, please leave a comment and click the like button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for how this story ends. Believe me, you'll be glad you stayed to find out how this story concludes. Growing up in small-town Ohio, I learned early that my mother, Margaret, had a very particular way of showing what she called love. Living in a small Ohio town, I quickly discovered that my mother, Margaret, had a unique method of expressing what she considered love. She was 52 years old and had spent most of my childhood perfecting the art of criticism disguised as concern. For most of my life, my 52-year-old mother had refined the skill of offering criticism under the pretense of worry. Every achievement I brought home from school was met with a lecture about not getting too big for my britches. Whenever I came home with an accomplishment from school, she would lecture me about not becoming arrogant. When I made honor roll, she'd remind me that grades don't matter if you don't have common sense. Upon making the honor roll, she would lecture me that grades aren't important without common sense. When I won the school spelling bee, she told me that being smart doesn't make you special if you can't relate to regular people. After winning the school spelling bee, she said that being intelligent doesn't make you unique if you cannot connect with others. My stepfather, Tom, tried his best to balance out her negativity. My stepfather, Tom, made an effort to counteract her pessimism. But he'd learned long ago that disagreeing with Margaret only made things worse for everyone involved. He had long known, however, that arguing with Margaret just made the situation worse for everyone. He'd give me encouraging looks from across the dinner table while she dissected my latest accomplishment, finding flaws where others saw success. As she picked apart my recent achievements, identifying faults where others saw triumphs, he would give me supportive glances from across the dining table. I spent my teenage years walking on eggshells, desperately trying to find the magic combination of achievements that would finally earn her genuine pride. Throughout my adolescence, I tiptoed around her, hoping to find the perfect mix of successes that would finally gain her authentic approval. High school became my refuge. High school was a place of safety for me. Teachers appreciated my dedication, and I threw myself into every academic challenge available. My dedication was valued by my teachers, and I committed myself to every academic challenge. I edited the school newspaper, participated in the debate team, and maintained a perfect grade point average. I was the editor of the school newspaper, a member of the debate team, and I kept a perfect GPA. Each success felt like building armor against my mother's constant undermining. Every accomplishment felt like I was creating a shield against my mother's persistent attempts to diminish me. When college acceptance letters started arriving, I saw my chance for freedom. The arrival of college acceptance letters represented my opportunity for liberation. The day I received my acceptance to Ohio State University with a partial scholarship, I raced home with the letter clutched in my trembling hands. I ran home the day I was accepted to Ohio State University with a partial scholarship, gripping the letter in my shaking hands. I burst through the front door, practically glowing with excitement. I entered the front door, practically radiating with happiness. Margaret was folding laundry in the living room, her expression already shifting to annoyance at my dramatic entrance. My mother, Margaret, was folding laundry in the living room, her face already showing irritation at my dramatic entry. I presented the acceptance letter like it was made of gold, explaining the scholarship and the communications program I'd been accepted into. I showed her the acceptance letter as if it were a treasure, explaining the scholarship and my acceptance into the communications program. She barely glanced at the letter before handing it back. "College is expensive, Janet." She gave the letter a brief look before giving it back. "College is pricey, Janet. Even with some scholarship money, we can't afford to send you away to play around for 4 years. We can't afford to send you off to mess around for 4 years, even with a scholarship. You should think about getting a job at the grocery store or maybe learning to do hair. At least that's practical. You should consider working at the grocery store or maybe becoming a hairstylist. At least those are practical." The words hit me like ice water. I was stunned by her words. But I'd prepared for this response. However, I was strategic communication. Without my mother's constant criticism echoing in my head, I began to see myself clearly for the first time. Without my mother's continuous criticism in my mind, I was able to see myself for the first time. My communications professor, Dr. Williams, became an unexpected mentor. Dr. Williams, my communications professor, became a mentor I never expected. She was in her mid-50s with kind eyes and an encouraging smile that reminded me what supportive adults actually looked like. She was in her mid-50s with gentle eyes and a reassuring smile, which reminded me of what a supportive adult was like. After I delivered a particularly strong presentation on crisis management, she asked me to stay after class. After a very good presentation on crisis management, she requested I stay after the lecture. "Janet, you have exceptional potential in this field," she said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Janet, you have extraordinary promise in this field," she said, leaning in with sincere interest. "Have you considered pursuing internships with major firms? I have connections that could help open doors for you. Have you thought about interning with major companies? I have contacts who could help you get a foot in the door." The conversation that followed changed the trajectory of my entire college experience. That conversation altered the entire course of my college career. Dr. Williams introduced me to alumni working in top marketing and public relations firms across the Midwest. Dr. Williams connected me with former students who were working at leading marketing and public relations companies throughout the Midwest. Through her network, I secured internships that provided real-world experience and valuable connections. Thanks to her network, I got internships that gave me real-world experience and important connections. Each semester, my confidence grew stronger. My confidence increased with each new semester. I was building a professional identity that had nothing to do with my family's limited expectations. I was creating a professional persona that was independent of my family's narrow expectations. By my senior year, I'd completed internships at 2 prestigious firms and received a job offer from a major marketing company in Chicago. In my final year of college, I had already finished internships at 2 prestigious companies and had a job offer from a major marketing company in Chicago. The position came with a starting salary that was more than my mother had ever earned, full benefits, and opportunities for rapid advancement. The job offered a starting salary higher than my mother had ever made, full benefits, and chances for quick promotion. I was graduating summa cum laude with a grade point average that placed me in the top 5% of my class. I was graduating with the highest honors, with a GPA that put me in the top 5% of my class. Everything I'd worked for was finally coming together. All my hard work was finally paying off. As graduation approached, I faced a difficult decision about whether to invite my family to the ceremony. With graduation nearing, I had to make a tough choice about whether to invite my family to the event. Part of me wanted to protect this achievement from their potential negativity. A part of me wanted to shield this accomplishment from their potential pessimism. But a larger part still hoped that seeing my success might finally shift something in our relationship. But a bigger part of me hoped that witnessing my success might finally change our relationship. Maybe witnessing me receive academic honors in front of hundreds of people would help my mother understand that I wasn't the failure she'd always predicted I'd become. Perhaps seeing me get academic honors in front of hundreds of people would make my mother realize I wasn't the failure she had always said I would be. I chose hope over self-protection and sent them an invitation. I chose optimism over protecting myself and invited them. The morning of graduation dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect May days that seemed designed for celebrating new beginnings. Graduation morning was bright and clear, one of those flawless May days that seemed perfect for celebrating new starts. I woke up in my tiny apartment near campus with butterflies dancing in my stomach. I woke up in my small campus apartment with a nervous feeling in my stomach. This was it. This was the day. After 4 years of hard work, sacrifice, and personal growth, I was about to officially become a college graduate with highest honors. After 4 years of effort, sacrifice, and personal development, I was about to officially graduate college with top honors. My roommate Sarah was already awake, sitting at our kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee and a genuine smile. My roommate Sarah was already up, sitting at our kitchen table with 2 coffees and a real smile. "How are you feeling, graduate?" she asked, sliding one of the cups toward me. "How do you feel, graduate?" she asked, pushing one of the cups my way. Sarah had been my closest friend since freshman year orientation, and she knew better than anyone how complicated my relationship with my family had become over the years. Sarah was my best friend from freshman orientation, and she understood better than anyone how difficult my family relationship had become. "Nervous," I admitted, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "I'm nervous," I confessed, holding the warm mug. Not about the ceremony itself, but about whether my mom will actually be proud of me, or if she'll find some way to make this about everything I'm doing wrong. I'm not nervous about the ceremony, but about whether my mom will be proud of me or find a way to make this about my mistakes. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Sarah leaned over the table and squeezed my hand. She'd witnessed enough phone conversations with my mother to understand exactly what I was worried about. Having overheard many of my phone calls with my mother, she knew exactly what my concerns were. We spent the morning getting ready together, carefully pressing my graduation gown and making sure my honor cords were positioned correctly. We got ready together that morning, carefully ironing my graduation gown and ensuring my honor cords were in the right place. I'd bought a special dress for underneath the gown, something that made me feel confident and professional. I had purchased a unique dress to wear under the gown that made me feel self-assured and professional. Sarah helped me with my makeup, chattering about the celebration dinner we'd planned with our friend group later that evening. Sarah did my makeup while talking about the celebratory dinner we had planned with our friends for that night. Around 10:30, my phone rang. It was Tom calling to let me know they were running about an hour behind schedule. Around 10:30, Tom called to inform me they were running about an hour late. "Your mother had some last-minute concerns about her outfit," he explained with the patient tone of someone who'd learned to navigate Margaret's unpredictable moods. "Your mother had some last-minute worries about her outfit," he said with the calm voice of someone who was used to dealing with Margaret's unpredictable behavior. "We'll be there in time for the ceremony though. She's actually excited to see you graduate. But we will be there in time for the ceremony. She is genuinely excited for your graduation." That last comment gave me a flutter of hope. The last comment sparked a glimmer of hope in me. Maybe today would be different. Perhaps today would be unlike other days. Maybe seeing me achieve something this significant would finally help her understand that her daughter wasn't the disappointment she'd always believed me to be. Maybe seeing this major accomplishment would finally help her realize that her daughter wasn't the letdown she always thought I was. When they finally arrived at my apartment, I could immediately sense the tension radiating from my mother. The moment they arrived at my apartment, I could feel my mother's tension. She emerged from their car wearing a floral dress that looked like it belonged at a church service rather than a graduation ceremony. She stepped out of the car in a floral dress that seemed more suited for church than a graduation. Her mouth already set in the disapproving line I knew so well. Her mouth was already set in that familiar disapproving expression. "Janet, that dress is awfully short, isn't it?" were the first words out of her mouth. "Janet, your dress is quite short, isn't it?" was the first thing she said. Not hello, or congratulations, or any acknowledgement of the significance of the day. There was no greeting, congratulations, or recognition of the day's importance. "And you've put on weight since Christmas. I hope the graduation gown will hide some of that." "You've gained weight since Christmas. I hope the graduation gown covers some of that." Tom shot her a warning look and stepped forward to give me a genuine hug. Tom gave her a warning look and came over to give me a sincere hug. "Congratulations, sweetheart. We're proud of you," he said quietly, though I could see the stress lines around his eyes that told me the car ride had been difficult. "Congratulations, honey. We're proud," he said softly, but the lines of stress around his eyes showed me the car ride had been hard. Margaret continued her inspection of my appearance while we walked toward campus. Margaret kept scrutinizing my appearance as we headed toward campus. "I still don't understand why you needed to waste 4 years on a communications degree. What exactly are you going to communicate? I still can't comprehend why you had to waste 4 years on a communications degree. What exactly are you going to communicate? At least if you'd studied nursing or teaching, you'd have something practical to fall back on. If you had at least studied nursing or teaching, you would have something practical to rely on." I tried to redirect the conversation to positive territory by telling them about my job offer in Chicago. I attempted to steer the conversation in a positive direction by mentioning my job offer in Chicago. "The firm specializes in crisis management and strategic communications for major corporations," I explained. "It's exactly the kind of work I've been preparing for, and the starting salary is really competitive. The company focuses on crisis management and strategic communications for large corporations," I said. "It's the exact type of work I've been training for, and the starting salary is very good." Instead of congratulations, Margaret's response was skepticism. Instead of being happy for me, Margaret was doubtful. "Chicago is expensive and you don't know anyone there. You'll probably spend all your money on rent and come crawling back home within 6 months. Chicago is costly, and you don't know anyone there. You'll likely spend all your money on rent and come back home within half a year. Your cousin Lisa got married last year and already has a baby on the way. At least she's building something real instead of chasing after fancy career dreams. Your cousin Lisa was married last year and is already expecting a baby. At least she is building a real life instead of pursuing fancy career dreams." The comparison to Lisa stung because it was so predictable. The comparison to Lisa hurt because I knew it was coming. Throughout our childhood, Margaret had held up my cousin as the gold standard of appropriate feminine ambition. Throughout my life, my mother had used my cousin as the perfect example. Of what a woman should aspire to. Lisa had married her high school boyfriend right after graduation and settled into a life that looked exactly like our mother's generation. After graduation, Lisa married her high school sweetheart and started a life that was just like my mother's generation. There was nothing wrong with Lisa's choices, but they weren't mine, and I was tired of being measured against someone else's definition of success. While there was nothing wrong with Lisa's decisions, they weren't my own, and I was tired of being judged by someone else's idea of success. We stopped for lunch at a restaurant near campus, and I watched other families celebrating their graduates with genuine joy and excitement. We stopped for lunch at a restaurant close to campus, and I saw other families happily and excitedly celebrating their graduates. Parents were taking photos, asking about future plans, and expressing pride in their children's accomplishments. Parents were taking pictures, asking about what was next, and showing pride in their children's achievements. Meanwhile, Margaret spent the entire meal criticizing everything from the restaurant's prices to the other family's show-off behavior. My mother, meanwhile, spent the whole meal finding fault with everything, from the restaurant's prices to the other family's show-off behavior. "Look at that woman taking pictures of her daughter with a diploma," Margaret said, gesturing dismissively at a nearby table where a mother was clearly bursting with pride, acting like graduating college is some kind of miracle. "Look at that mother taking pictures of her daughter with a diploma, acting as if graduating is a miracle," Margaret said, with a wave of her hand toward a nearby table where a mother was clearly very proud. "Plenty of people get degrees and still end up working retail jobs. Many people get degrees and still end up in retail jobs." Sarah arrived at the restaurant just as we were finishing lunch, and I watched my mother's demeanor shift even further. A volunteer usher approached our group with a friendly smile and a handful of programs. A volunteer with a friendly smile and programs walked up to our group. "Good afternoon. Are you here to celebrate a graduate today?" she asked cheerfully. "Good afternoon. Are you here to celebrate a graduate?" she asked with a smile. "Unfortunately, yes," Margaret replied with a tone that made the volunteer's smile falter slightly. "Yes, unfortunately," Margaret said in a way that made the volunteer's smile disappear slightly. "My daughter thinks she's accomplished something special, so here we are. My daughter believes she has achieved something special, so here we are." The usher glanced at me with confusion and sympathy before directing us toward available seating. The usher looked at me with a confused and sympathetic expression before showing us where to sit. I felt heat creeping up my neck as I realized other families had overheard my mother's comment. I felt my neck get hot as I realized other families had heard what my mother said. Tom placed a protective hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Don't let her ruin this for you. This is your day." Tom put a reassuring hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Don't let her spoil this for you. This is your day." As we made our way through the crowd, I spotted Dr. Williams near the faculty staging area. As we walked through the crowd, I saw Dr. Williams by the faculty staging area. She caught my eye and waved enthusiastically, gesturing for me to come over. She saw me, waved excitedly, and motioned for me to come to her. I excused myself from my family and walked toward my favorite professor, grateful for a moment of genuine positivity. I left my family and walked toward my favorite professor, thankful for a moment of true positivity. "Janet, there's our star graduate," Dr. Williams said, pulling me into a warm hug. "Janet, here's our best graduate," Dr. Williams said, giving me a warm hug. "I'm so excited to see you receive your recognition today. You've earned every bit of it. I'm so thrilled to see you get your recognition today. You have earned it completely." She looked radiant in her academic regalia, her doctoral hood displaying the rich colors of her alma mater. She looked stunning in her academic clothes, with her doctoral hood showing the vibrant colors of her alma mater. "Thank you for everything you've done for me these past 4 years," I said, meaning every word. "I am so grateful for everything you have done for me over the last 4 years," I said, with full sincerity. "I never would have had the confidence to pursue that job in Chicago without your encouragement and mentorship. I would never have been confident enough to go for that job in Chicago without your encouragement and guidance." Dr. Williams beamed with pride. Dr. Williams smiled with pride. "That's what education is supposed to do. help students discover their potential and give them the tools to pursue their dreams. That's the purpose of education, to help students find their potential and give them the tools to chase their dreams. You're going to do incredible things in your career, Janet. I have no doubt about that. You will do amazing things in your career, Janet. I am certain of it. As we chatted about my upcoming move to Chicago and the exciting projects I'd be working on, I noticed my mother watching us from across the gathering area. While we talked about my move to Chicago and the projects I would be working on, I saw my mother watching us from across the area. Her expression was a mixture of irritation and something that looked almost like jealousy. She looked both irritated and almost jealous. When I rejoined my family a few minutes later, Margaret's mood had darkened even further. A few minutes later, when I went back to my family, Margaret was in an even worse mood. "What was that all about?" she asked with barely concealed annoyance. "What was that?" she asked, with her annoyance barely hidden. "Dr. Williams was just congratulating me on graduating with honors and telling me how excited she is about my job offer," I explained, trying to keep my tone light and positive. "Dr. Williams was just congratulating me on graduating with honors and saying how excited she is about my job offer," I explained, trying to sound cheerful. "Well, isn't she just wonderful?" Margaret said with heavy sarcasm. "Well, isn't she just great?" Margaret said, dripping with sarcasm. "I suppose she thinks she knows you better than your own mother does." "I guess she thinks she knows you better than your own mother does." The comment stung because there was some truth to it. The comment hurt because it was somewhat true. Dr. Williams had recognized and nurtured qualities in me that my mother had never even acknowledged existed. Dr. Williams had seen and developed talents in me that my mother had never even recognized. But this wasn't the time or place for that conversation. But this was not the right time or place for that discussion. So I simply smiled and suggested we find our seats before the ceremony began. So I just smiled and suggested we go find our seats before the ceremony started. The processional music started, and graduates began filing into the venue in alphabetical order by department. The processional music began, and graduates started entering the venue in alphabetical order by their department. My heart rate quickened as I realized this was really happening. My heart beat faster as I realized this was actually taking place. After 4 years of hard work, I was about to officially become a college graduate with the highest academic honors the university offered. After 4 years of effort, I was about to officially become a college graduate with the university's highest academic honors. Backstage with the other graduates, the atmosphere was electric with excitement and nervous energy. Behind the stage with the other graduates, there was a palpable sense of excitement and nervousness. Students were adjusting their caps, helping each other with honor cords, and taking selfies to commemorate the moment. Students were fixing their caps, helping each other with their honor cords, and taking selfies to remember the day. I found myself standing next to Michael, a guy from my advanced public relations seminar who'd also received a job offer from a major firm. I ended up standing next to Michael, a guy from my advanced public relations class who also got a job offer from a major company. "Can you believe we actually made it?" he asked with a grin, straightening his summa cum laude cord. "Is it real that we actually did it?" he asked, grinning and adjusting his summa cum laude cord. 4 years ago, I was convinced I'd never survive college algebra. And now here we are, graduating with highest honors. 4 years ago, I was sure I would never pass college algebra. And now, we're graduating with the highest honors. I laughed, remembering my own moments of doubt during particularly challenging semesters. I laughed, recalling my own moments of uncertainty during tough semesters. I keep thinking someone's going to realize they made a mistake and take away my diploma, I admitted. I keep thinking someone will realize their error and take my diploma away, I confessed. "Are your parents excited?" Michael asked. "Are your parents excited?" Michael inquired. And I felt my stomach tighten slightly. My stomach tightened a bit. "My mom is here," I said carefully. "My mom is here," I said cautiously. "She's not exactly the celebrating type, but I'm hoping today might be different." She isn't the type to celebrate, but I'm hoping today will be different." Michael nodded understandingly. Michael nodded, showing he understood. My dad was skeptical about college too, but when he saw my job offer letter, he finally got it. My dad was also doubtful about college, but once he saw my job offer, he finally understood. Sometimes parents just need to see concrete proof that all the hard work was worth it. Sometimes, parents just need tangible evidence that the hard work paid off. His words gave me a small spark of hope. His words gave me a small glimmer of hope. Maybe watching me walk across that stage and receive recognition for my achievements would be the concrete proof my mother needed. Perhaps seeing me cross that stage and be recognized for my accomplishments would be the proof my mother needed. Maybe this would finally be the moment she understood that I wasn't the failure she'd always predicted I'd become. Maybe this would be the moment she finally realized that I wasn't the failure she always said I would be. The ceremony coordinator called for quiet and began explaining the processional order. The ceremony coordinator asked for silence and started explaining the order of the procession. Faculty members lined up first, followed by graduates organized by academic distinction. First, the faculty members lined up, and then the graduates, organized by their academic honors. As a summa cum laude graduate, I would be among the first students called to receive their diplomas. As a summa cum laude graduate, I was one of the first students who would be called to get my diploma. "Ladies and gentlemen," the coordinator announced, "this is your moment. 4 years of hard work have led to this day. Walk proudly, celebrate your achievements, and remember that your families are here because they love you and want to share in your success." The coordinator announced, "This is your moment, ladies and gentlemen. 4 years of hard work have led to this day. Walk with pride, celebrate your successes, and remember that your families are here out of love and a desire to share in your success." I took a deep breath and tried to push down the growing anxiety about my mother's behavior. I took a deep breath and tried to suppress the increasing worry about my mother's actions. Tom's earlier words echoed in my mind. Tom's words from earlier repeated in my head. This was my day. This was my day. I had earned this recognition through countless hours of studying, multiple internships, and consistent academic excellence. I had earned this recognition with many hours of studying, several internships, and consistently great academic performance. Whatever happened with my family, no one could take away the fact that I had achieved something significant. No matter what happened with my family, no one could take away the fact that I had accomplished something important. Williams has told me wonderful things about your academic performance and your upcoming career opportunity. You should be very proud of what you've accomplished. Congratulations, Miss Collins. Dr. Williams has told me great things about your academic work and your upcoming job. You should be very proud of what you have done. Thank you, sir, I managed to say, despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. Thank you, sir, I said, despite the emotions I felt. This was it. This was the moment. I was officially a college graduate with highest honors. I was officially a college graduate with top honors. As I posed for the official photographer and then walked to the other side of the stage, I looked out at the audience again. After I posed for the photographer and walked to the other side of the stage, I looked out at the audience again. I could see Sarah jumping up and down with excitement, Dr. Williams beaming with pride, and Tom still taking pictures with enthusiasm. I saw Sarah jumping up and down excitedly, Dr. Williams smiling with pride, and Tom still taking pictures with enthusiasm. Margaret remained seated with the same sour expression she'd worn all day. Margaret stayed seated, with the same unhappy look she had all day. After all the diplomas had been distributed, Dr. Thompson returned to the podium for closing remarks. After all the diplomas were given out, Dr. Thompson went back to the podium for his final remarks. Before we conclude today's ceremony, he announced, I'd like to invite family members who wish to share words of pride and congratulations with our graduates to come forward. This is your opportunity to publicly celebrate the achievements of your graduate. Before we finish the ceremony today, he said, I want to invite family members who would like to share words of pride and congratulations with our graduates to come forward. This is your chance to publicly celebrate your graduates' accomplishments. This was a tradition I'd forgotten about, though I remembered seeing it at previous graduations. I had forgotten about this tradition, but I remembered seeing it at previous graduations. Usually, parents would come forward to share brief, emotional expressions of pride in their children's accomplishments. Typically, parents would come up to share short, emotional words of pride in their children's achievements. It was always one of the most touching parts of the ceremony, with mothers and fathers tearfully expressing how proud they were and how excited they were about their graduates' future. It was always one of the most moving parts of the ceremony, with parents tearfully saying how proud they were and how excited they were for their graduates' future. Several parents made their way to the microphone line, each sharing heartfelt words about their children's hard work, determination, and bright futures ahead. Several parents walked to the microphone, each sharing sincere words about their children's hard work, resolve, and bright futures. The audience responded with warm applause after each brief speech, and many graduates were wiping away tears of joy as they heard their parents' public expressions of love and pride. The audience applauded warmly after each short speech, and many graduates wiped away tears of happiness as they heard their parents publicly express their love and pride. I wasn't expecting my family to participate in this portion of the ceremony. I didn't expect my family to take part in this part of the ceremony. Margaret had never been one for public displays of emotion, and I assumed she'd find the whole thing embarrassing or unnecessary. Margaret had never been one to show emotion in public, and I assumed she would find the whole thing embarrassing or pointless. So I was genuinely shocked when I saw her stand up and begin making her way toward the microphone. So I was truly shocked when I saw her stand up and start walking toward the microphone. Tom looked equally surprised and concerned. Tom looked just as surprised and worried. He half stood as if to follow her, then seemed to think better of it and sat back down with a worried expression. He started to stand, as if to go after her, but then seemed to reconsider and sat back down with a worried look. My stomach dropped as I watched my mother join the line of parents waiting to speak. My stomach sank as I watched her get in line with the other parents waiting to speak. What was she planning to say? What was she going to say? In my wildest imagination, I couldn't picture Margaret delivering the kind of warm, proud speech that other parents had shared. I could not imagine Margaret giving the kind of warm, proud speech that the other parents had shared. But maybe, just maybe, this was her way of finally acknowledging my achievements. But maybe, just maybe, this was her way of finally recognizing my accomplishments. As she moved closer to the front of the line, I felt a mixture of hope and terror. As she got closer to the front of the line, I felt a mix of hope and fear. This could be the moment our relationship finally shifted into something healthier, or it could be something much worse. This could be the moment our relationship finally became healthier, or it could be much worse. The parent in front of her finished speaking to enthusiastic applause and returned to their seat. The parent in front of her finished speaking to loud applause and went back to their seat. Margaret stepped up to the microphone, and I held my breath. Margaret went to the microphone, and I held my breath. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the venue through the sound system. "Good afternoon," she started, her voice sounding clearly through the sound system. "I'm Margaret Collins, and my daughter Janet just received her diploma." "I am Margaret Collins, and my daughter Janet just got her diploma." So far, so good. So far, so good. My heart was beating so hard, I was sure the people around me could hear it. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure everyone around me could hear it. "You all see my daughter up there looking so proud," Margaret continued, and something in her tone made my blood run cold. "You all see my daughter up there looking so proud," Margaret went on, and her tone chilled me. "But I need to tell you the truth. But I have to tell you the truth." The audience fell completely silent, sensing that something unusual was happening. The audience became completely silent, sensing that something strange was about to happen. Janet has always been a dreamer, never realistic about her limitations. She thinks this piece of paper makes her special. But I've been telling her for years, "You'll never amount to anything. This is just expensive proof of how delusional she is." Janet has always been a dreamer, never practical about her limitations. She believes this diploma makes her special. But I've told her for years, you will never be successful. This is just expensive evidence of how out of touch she is. The words hit me like a physical blow. Her words were like a punch. The entire venue erupted in shocked gasps and uncomfortable murmurs. The whole venue was filled with shocked gasps and awkward whispers. I felt the blood drain from my face as hundreds of strangers absorbed my mother's public declaration that I was worthless. I felt all the blood leave my face as hundreds of strangers took in my mother's public announcement that I was worthless. Other graduates around me were staring with expressions of horror and disbelief. Other graduates around me were staring with looks of shock and disbelief. Faculty members looked stunned. The faculty members looked stunned. Parents in the audience were shaking their heads in dismay. Parents in the audience were shaking their heads in disappointment. Dr. Thompson stepped toward the microphone as if to intervene, but Margaret wasn't finished. Dr. Thompson moved toward the microphone to intervene, but Margaret wasn't done. Everyone's acting like going to college is such an accomplishment, but plenty of people get degrees and still end up as failures. Everyone is acting like going to college is a big accomplishment, but many people get degrees and still end up as failures. I've tried to prepare Janet for the real world by not filling her head with unrealistic expectations, but clearly I haven't done enough. She'll probably come crawling back home within a year when she realizes that nobody cares about her fancy grades. I tried to get Janet ready for the real world by not filling her head with false expectations, but I clearly haven't done enough. She will probably come back home within a year when she realizes that no one cares about her good grades. The venue was now completely silent except for my mother's voice echoing through the sound system. The venue was now completely quiet except for my mother's voice coming through the sound system. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience, watching this humiliation happen to someone else. I felt like I was watching this happen to someone else, as if I were outside my own body. This couldn't really be happening. This couldn't be real. This couldn't really be my graduation day. This couldn't actually be my graduation day. Security personnel were starting to move toward the stage, unsure of how to handle a situation where a family member was publicly destroying their own child at a graduation ceremony. Security guards were starting to go toward the stage, unsure of what to do about a family member publicly humiliating their own child at a graduation ceremony. Margaret finally stepped away from the microphone and began walking back toward her seat, leaving behind a venue full of shocked and uncomfortable people. Margaret eventually stepped away from the microphone and started walking back to her seat, leaving behind a venue filled with shocked and uncomfortable people. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity as everyone tried to process what they just witnessed. The silence lasted for what felt like forever as everyone tried to understand what they had just seen. I sat frozen in my chair, diploma clutched in my trembling hands, feeling like my entire world had just collapsed in front of hundreds of strangers. I sat still in my seat, holding my diploma in my shaking hands, feeling as if my entire world had just fallen apart in front of hundreds of strangers. The immediate aftermath of my mother's speech felt like being trapped in a nightmare. The time right after my mother's speech felt like a living nightmare. The entire venue remained in stunned silence as Margaret made her way back to her seat, apparently satisfied with the damage she'd inflicted. The entire venue stayed in a stunned silence as Margaret went back to her seat, seemingly pleased with the harm she had caused. I could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes on me, some filled with pity, others with outrage at what they just witnessed. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, some with pity, and others with anger at what they had just seen. Dr. Thompson approached the microphone with the composure of someone accustomed to handling unexpected situations, but even he seemed shaken by what had just occurred. Dr. Thompson came to the microphone with the calm of someone used to dealing with the unexpected, but even he seemed rattled by what had just happened. Ladies and gentlemen, he began carefully, graduation day is about celebrating achievements and looking forward to bright futures. Let's continue with that spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, he began carefully, graduation is about celebrating accomplishments and looking ahead to bright futures. Let's continue in that spirit. But the mood in the venue had fundamentally shifted. But the Atmosphere in the venue had completely changed. What should have been a joyous conclusion to the ceremony now felt tainted by my mother's toxic words. What should have been a happy end to the ceremony now felt spoiled by my mother's hurtful words. I remained frozen in my seat, my mind racing between humiliation, rage, and disbelief. I remained frozen in my seat, my mind going back and forth between humiliation, anger, and disbelief. 4 years of hard work, countless sacrifices, and the proudest moment of my life had just been turned into a public spectacle of family dysfunction. 4 years of hard work, many sacrifices, and the most proud moment of my life had just been made into a public display of family problems. Sarah had moved from her seat in the audience and was making her way toward the graduate section, clearly intent on reaching me. Sarah had left her seat in the audience and was coming toward the graduates, clearly wanting to get to me. Dr. Williams was also heading in my direction with an expression of maternal concern that stood in sharp contrast to my actual mother's cruelty. Dr. Williams was also coming toward me with a look of motherly worry that was a stark contrast to my real mother's cruelty. But as I sat there, absorbing the full impact of what had just happened, something unexpected began stirring inside me. But as I sat there, taking in the full effect of what had just happened, something I didn't expect began to stir inside me. Beneath the shock and humiliation, I felt a flame of anger igniting. Below the shock and humiliation, I felt a fire of anger starting to burn. Not the helpless, internalized anger I'd carried for years, but something cleaner and more powerful. Not the helpless anger I had held inside for years, but something purer and stronger. For 22 years, I had accepted my mother's criticism, internalized her doubts, and worked desperately to prove myself worthy of love that she was apparently incapable of giving. For 22 years, I had taken my mother's criticism, believed her doubts, and tried desperately to prove I was worthy of a love she was seemingly unable to give. I had spent my entire childhood and adolescence trying to be good enough, smart enough, accomplished enough to finally earn her approval. I had spent my whole childhood and teenage years trying to be good enough, smart enough, and accomplished enough to finally get her approval. And now, on the day when I had achieved everything I'd worked toward, she had chosen to publicly humiliate me rather than celebrate my success. And now, on the day I had achieved everything I had worked for, she had chosen to publicly humiliate me instead of celebrating my success. She had stood in front of hundreds of people and declared that her own daughter would never amount to anything. She had stood in front of hundreds of people and said that her own daughter would never be successful. The realization hit me with startling clarity. The realization came to me with surprising clarity. This wasn't about my worthlessness. This wasn't about me being worthless. This was about hers. This was about her worthlessness. A woman who truly loved her child would never choose to destroy them on their day of triumph. A mother who truly loved her child would never choose to ruin them on their day of victory. A healthy mother would have been bursting with pride to see her daughter graduate with highest honors and start a promising career. A healthy mother would have been overflowing with pride to see her daughter graduate with top honors and begin a promising career. Margaret's cruelty wasn't a reflection of my failures. Margaret's cruelty was not a sign of my failures. It was a reflection of her own deep-seated inadequacy and resentment. It was a reflection of her own deep-rooted feelings of inadequacy and bitterness. I thought about Dr. Williams, who had seen potential in me from the very first day of class. I thought about Dr. Williams, who had seen my potential from the first day of class. I thought about my professors, who had encouraged my ideas and pushed me to excel. I thought about my professors, who had supported my ideas and motivated me to do my best. I thought about the employers who had competed to hire me based on my skills and accomplishments. I thought about the employers who had competed to hire me because of my skills and achievements. I thought about Sarah and my other friends who celebrated my successes without reservation. I thought about Sarah and my other friends who celebrated my successes completely. All of these people couldn't be wrong about my worth. All these people could not be wrong about my value. The problem wasn't me. The problem was not me. The problem was that I had spent my entire life seeking validation from someone who was fundamentally incapable of providing it. The problem was that I had spent my whole life trying to get validation from someone who was fundamentally unable to give it. As this realization crystallized, I felt something I'd never experienced before: absolute clarity about what I needed to do. As this realization became clear, I felt something I had never felt before: a total understanding of what I had to do. I stood up from my chair, my legs surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. I stood up from my chair, my legs feeling surprisingly stable despite the adrenaline rushing through me. The movement caught the attention of graduates and family members around me, and I could sense people watching to see how I would respond to my mother's attack. My movement got the attention of the graduates and families around me, and I could feel people watching to see how I would react to my mother's attack. Margaret was now seated again next to Tom, who looked mortified by what had just transpired. Margaret was now sitting again next to Tom, who looked humiliated by what had just happened. She appeared pleased with herself, as if she'd accomplished exactly what she'd set out to do. She seemed pleased with herself, as if she had done exactly what she intended. She probably expected me to shrink away in shame, to accept this public humiliation as my due for having the audacity to achieve something she could never accomplish herself. She likely expected me to cower in shame, to accept this public humiliation because I had dared to achieve something she never could. Instead, I began walking toward the stage. I started walking toward the stage. Each step felt deliberate and purposeful. Every step felt intentional and meaningful. I wasn't moving out of anger or impulsiveness, but from a place of absolute certainty about what needed to happen next. I was not moving out of anger or on impulse, but from a place of complete certainty about what needed to be done. The conversations around me faded into background noise as I focused entirely on what I was about to do. The conversations around me became background noise as I focused completely on what I was about to do. Dr. Thompson noticed my approach and met me halfway. Dr. Thompson saw me coming and met me halfway.